Welcome back to another Boxscore Geek show. Don't worry. We are back to basketball after a week where we did hockey. And with us, we have another special guest today. Or actually, I guess you are officially a co-host, Andrew. I just forget to call like all the time because of Daniel, my son. So for those of you who don't know, I'm your host, Dre Alvarez, a.k.a. Nerd Numbers, co-host Andrew Sutton, who you may know from the comment section. Say hey, Andrew.
Hey, I'm just Robert Horry. Don't give me too much credit. I'm just Robert Horry.
But that set 7 rings, and he was huge. Like I think to get tangential, I'd have to look this up, but I think Robert Horry has probably been more important in a few finals runs than I would argue there are probably 2 Robert Horry finals runs. I'm gonna get us all in trouble here. 2 Robert Horry finals runs where he did better than 2 of Kobe's finals runs. Not everyone. I'm saying. You can pick 2 of Robert Horry's, 2 of Kobe's, and you would rather have Robert Horry's performance than Kobe's.
Hey, Brian, which way can I point so they know who to attack?
You're pointing at me right now. You're pointing at me.
This way?
Yeah, that's me. I'm to your left.
Okay. This guy.
Robert Horry, one of the original 3-and-D players. That's a good comparison.
All right, and as always, we are produced by our own voice of God, Boxscore Brian Foster. Say hey, Brian.
What's up, Dre? I guess I'm more of the special host than a special guest or a regular host, so I'm special in my own way.
I think it's like one of those, like you're like the player coach, right? You're supposed to be the coach. We don't always have the full roster, so you come on. So you're like Bill Russell, man. You're the Bill Russell of the podcast.
I'm more like Gordon Bombay, actually, in my coaching skills. But anyway, boy, there's a lot of NBA to talk about, and it's great to have Andrew back as usual.
All right, so topics we'll be going over. We're going to be talking more Embiid. It's not really a dead horse. Embiid has been dominating a lot of the media, but it might be a dead horse from us because Andrew, I think you and I are in the same boat where I feel like a crazy person, where I keep saying the same things about Embiid, and the wave of mainstream and even analytics people I respect that have just gone nuts over 10 games of Embiid. We got to talk some more, including you talking about like you trade him right now for the right, and I think we've agreed on this and stuff for the right scenario.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put a disclaimer out there. Like, personality-wise, I love Embiid. He's hilarious. He's funny. I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there so people don't just think I just kind of have some grudge against him. But, yes, I love players like that. So, he's fun. He's very entertaining.
And we'll definitely go down more why we're saying what we're saying. We're going to go over drama in Chicago. Chicago's one of our favorite teams, at least mine. It's one of my favorite teams this season. We can talk that. We're going to talk Carmelo Anthony being on the trading block, and then, Andrew, you added a great part. DeMarcus Cousins may be on the trading blocks. We're going to talk some of the pitfalls in both of those players. And then, of course, this wouldn't be our normal podcast if we didn't talk about the All-Star reserves and how much we hate some of them. For F's sakes, what does Gobert need to do to get some love here? He's DeAndre Jordan 2-0. Didn't get the nod. So let's get started. Let's talk Embiid, Andrew, and I'll try and let you get most of this because I've talked a lot. But the basic problem with Embiid, and I wrote a follow-up article after a podcast. Brian and I discussed this 2 podcasts ago, where I just said, Embiid looks good. He's a very promising rookie. And if we look at the last 10 games that he's played, it's worth noting he's out injured again, that he's played at star level, but he's not MVP level yet, right? He's not playing at the same levels of James Harden. You're going to talk defensive-minded bigs, not at the same level of Rudy Gobert. Oh, by the way, I kept messing up his name. Someone correct me on this. I didn't realize Joel Embiid, it's spelled Joel, but it's pronounced Joel. And I said Joel about 100 times last podcast. So apologies, Embiid, for screwing up your name.
Oh, and Dre, since you didn't know how to pronounce his name, that means you are not allowed to talk about him, according to that one commenter. So not knowing his name is the death nail.
We don't get a ton of YouTube comments, Brian, but I will say thank you for responding to them because I don't have it in me. But anyway, I just said, I'm not even saying I don't think he'll be great. I'm not even saying I don't think he'll be a star. I'm just saying hold your horses. I've seen a bunch of people, even people I respect, basically saying he's going to be a guaranteed superstar and he's proof of the process for Hinkie. And the trope I always bring up that I named is called Remember the Linsanity. It's been 10 games, and all of the injury concerns that caused him to drop from the guaranteed number 1 spot to the 3 spot are still there. So that was the long and short of my discussion was hold your horses, everybody. It's been 10 games. He might be great, but he's not there yet. And so, Andrew, and you had some other thoughts about arbitrage opportunities, as well as, how you would consider trading Embiid if the right circumstances came about, because the value on him is so high right now.
Yeah, my whole point was
Guys,
present value.
have told the
like, if I could get a couple of starters for what essentially is an average rookie right now, you do it, no matter who that guy is. I don't care if he becomes a star next year or 2 years from now. He's going to start. He's going to start getting expensive. He's going to start getting expensive. He's been in the league You've already paid him 2 years for nothing. He's done nothing for 2 years.
I was going to ask you on that, though. So what level of starter? So you said 2 starters. I don't necessarily agree because. Okay. So give me 2 names.
Could you get Otto Porter for Embiid? I think you could.
Oh, okay. So this is interesting. I like and Otto. And by the way, what you're doing from our perspective, when you say 2 starters, you're saying because Otto Porter is one of these players that has been a secret sauce on the Wizards, right? Everybody thinks it's Wall and of course Beal. We know that Otto Porter has been playing great.
And Gortat.
So Gortat would be Otto Porter and Gortat. Yeah, I'd do that. I'd definitely do Otto Porter and Gortat for Embiid, and you could probably get a pick or 2 out of that.
I just meant he was playing well. Yeah, that would be a great trade.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Undervalued assets you could get for someone who's super overvalued. I think the name of this podcast should just be Don't Fall in Love with Your Draft Pick, because Cousins, Carmelo, and now Embiid. I mean, I don't know if Embiid's going to be the next Cousins story, but he's barely playing. He's averaging in his limited minutes, and people are like want him to be in the All-Star game. That reeks of like a Carmelo syndrome type deal.
Well, like I said, I one thing that I was pleasantly surprised about when I went and looked at his numbers, because my thesis was going to be hold your horses, he's below average. And the good news is when I dove into the game by game numbers, I said, you guys are right. He's playing star level. He's not playing all-star level. So when we say star level, from our perspective, you play twice as good as the average NBA player. That's where we kind of qualify you as star. For perspective, last season, Otto Porter was right at that range. This season, he's a little below it. So basically what's funny from your point, Andrew, is essentially, we're saying over the last 10 games, Embiid has played at about the same level as we're going to get. Now you can point at Andrew, by the way. Andrew can be mad at this. He's played at like the same level as Otto Porter. And that's fine. That's good. And I'm just saying the people that are assuming he's going to be a guaranteed star, it's like these people seem to forget Brandon Roy's and Greg Oden's. And, people forget this. We didn't think Sam Bowie, or Bowie, however you say it, I don't know the pronunciation. We didn't think he was necessarily a great draft pick. James Mercado wrote a piece up on this, how, that draft, there were other good names, including Charles Barkley, you should have taken instead. That said, he played great as a rookie. He wasn't rookie of the year, but that's because Hakeem and Michael Jordan are Hakeem and Michael Jordan. But, Sam Bowie was actually a good player and then was injured and just disappeared. So people forget all of these other examples of players that looked great, looked like stars, and went down with injury. And Embiid is, he's been out 2 games in a row now, I think 3, with injury. He's been on a minutes restrictions. He's missed 2 years with injury. Hold your horses. 10 games is not enough to erase all of the injury concerns for me, let alone the other concerns his games have. He's not like Karl Anthony. Karl Anthony Towns last season looked good with the ability to be amazing. And in some cases, right, Karl Anthony Towns had these amazing games like 40-point, 15 rebounds, 5 assist games.
Karl Anthony Towns is at least a starter. Can we agree on that?
Oh, absolutely.
No. In his productivity, he's at least a starter.
Karl Anthony Towns, right, his wins per 48 over both seasons has been about 0.16, and that's been because it seems like he has a little bit of rust to start the seasons for whatever reasons. But absolutely, Karl Anthony Towns is a starter on any team in the NBA. Joel Embiid, do you think this? I don't think the Spurs start him. Spurs might get 20 minutes on the Spurs.
He's a rotational guy at the bottom of the rotation too.
Well, I mean, the last couple of games he's been great, but that's the other funny thing, and this is a Bill James point, and Stan Van Gundy. Stan Van Gundy said this at Sloan one year. If a player's getting reduced minutes, you can't. This is almost a dig on the analytics guys, the people who quote per 48 numbers like us. If a player can't play the full game, if a player can't play starters minutes, which would usually be at 36 or more, you can't just look at their per minute numbers and say they're great and act like that 20 minutes of the game he can't play is fine.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem I have with that, though, Dre, is that that's kind of a black box. I mean, in terms of saying, yeah, he definitely can't do it. So, okay, let's take, like, I don't know if this is a good example, but I'd guess it is. Maybe the Dallas Mavericks this year, you have Andrew Bogut, who's in his 30s, always played reduced minutes. Okay, I'd buy it. Maybe he can't play more than 20 a game. But then let's look at another scenario where we had all kinds of shows about this when it was going on. When Drummond was a rookie and a second-year player, he was playing very few minutes, and he was playing like one of the best centers in the league during that time. We're like, come on, guys, give him more minutes. Let's see if he can handle it. And, of course, once he did it, we know what happened from there. He took his spot as one of the best centers. So, maybe it's true for some guys, but is it necessarily true for everyone?
Well, that's what I'm in the case of Embiid, the issue is the injuries. That's what I'm saying.
I agree with that.
I'm going to also add a point that Patrick made in the email thread that he was like, well, a lot of his shortcomings is stuff that rookies tend to go through, like fouls and turnovers. But
yeah.
if I can get an already made product now, in the present value of it, I'll just go ahead and trade him. Because I don't think Philly knows that out of the three bigs they got out of the lottery, Noel, Okafor, and Embiid, I don't think they realize Noel is so good. Because if they did know, they would play him.
Well, I think he's had
injury. And then Noel doesn't want to come back. He's already said he doesn't want to come back to Philly, so you down a big.
So this is an interesting point that I'll let us get the tangent and then this segment on. That's always been amusing to me about the tank for good picks strategy and what these teams seem to do, which is really bizarre to me. And you're saying this about Noel, and it happened last season is it last season or 2 seasons ago with D'Angelo Russell and who was the coach of the Lakers?
Byron Scott.
Yeah. So Byron Scott's sucking up to Kobe Bryant and not playing Randall and Russell. And they're confused and going, what the hell's going on? And what you go, these are, if you really believe in the tank for top draft picks, if you don't invest in those top draft picks, let's see, is the Melo Cousins one next? Yeah, I'm going to skip to Melo Cousins next, Brian, if that's okay. I'm going to skip over Chicago. We'll come back. The reason I'm going to bring this up is I think DeMarcus Cousins, based on his numbers, based on some of his good games, based on his skill set, could have been one of the best players in the NBA easily. It looked like he has all the skills to be so I could see Andrew, but let me finish, Andrew, and then I'll let you come in. I've got to buy that being on such a dysfunctional team, it's possible that he was always going to be a head case and never going to figure it out. But I can't buy that it helped them to be on a crappy team. And the same thing is true with all of these good bigs you're talking about. All these good bigs that need on Philly that need time to develop and practice and good mentoring. The fact that they're in this like no veterans, don't know if they're getting play time, don't know what's going on situation. I got to buy that's hindering their development. So same kind of situation with Embiid, Noel, Okafor. Like Cousins, like I'm curious your thoughts, Andrew. If you think Cousins, like had he been drafted by the Spurs or a more better, well-run team, if he could maybe be better.
I'm skeptical. I tend to believe that a lot of players are who they are. I mean, and then if we're going off small sample sizes of the college season, I mean, it's a gamble. So a lot of the bad teams tend to stay bad because they accumulate bad players. And what if Cousins, for whatever reason, is just a bad player? Or world average, and he's playing with bad players, so he doesn't look as great.
Yeah, I mean, and what's also just worth noting about,
and then LaMarcus Aldridge, was just saying he's coming back to earth now. Last season, it was just like, oh my God, the Spurs put all this magic, and I mean, he's older too, so
that's an entire other. So yeah, we'll have to talk more Aldridge because that's an interesting one. But yeah, it's like Kobe Bryant's a great example of this player where you look at his game and you go, Kobe. If you took out these 5 mid-range shots, these 5 mid-range contested shots, which if we had better shot data, I'm sure we could, like sports view data, we could hone in on and say every game Kobe with about 6 seconds left on the shot clock, you were taking a contested or double team mid-range shot. You're doing that about 5 times a game. Just get rid of those. Just stop taking those shots. Just pass the ball. If you pass the ball, you go from being what we consider a great player. We agree. Like we thought he was close to star level. His best seasons, he's a top 20 player in the NBA. You go from being that to being elite. But he never did it. And I don't necessarily buy that Kobe didn't know that. And so the same thing with like Cousins. Cousins makes lots of bad decisions. There is an interesting question of, would better development make him a better player? What's funny, by the way, Andrew, you're basically like rehashing a chapter in the book Moneyball. Because Billy, that was a huge thing. No one seems to remember that from Moneyball. Billy Bean's comment was always, when you looked for prospect and players, he goes, you look for good decision makers, because even talented players, they don't stop making these bad decisions.
And that was going to be my next point. I was going to say, these are all great athletes, and with the right training and teaching and decision making, they all can potentially be Hall of Famers, because these are top notch athletes, and they're all athletic, and each have their own physical gifts. So, like Wiggins, for example, Wiggins has 44 or 40 something inch vertical, and can jump, and he's long and athletic and rangy, but it just doesn't come together in the whole algorithm.
And I will say, one underrated thing that's just always really weird to me is when people talk about skill and ability, they seem to leave out decision making. Because I think I've made this point before. If you look at the body type of LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony, right? If you just grabbed some raw stats and put them next to each other, they look really similar. And I've got to buy if there was some weird situation where you swapped the brain of LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony. They had each other's.
Interesting.
I think LeBron James.
And that's a great example too. LeBron, that was a really bad franchise he went to as a rookie. He struggled a little bit his first year, and then picked up the pieces really quickly. Next season, he was a star player really fast.
He was a high schooler. That was the amazing part.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dwight Howard as a high schooler is like the most impressive ever. But yeah, LeBron. But yeah, so I think it is funny how much we underrate this. We look at all the physical attributes people have.
Another guy who was a number one pick that went to a really bad franchise. So I just think it just depends on the person.
Do you think we need to make another face-off movie, but instead of Cage and Travolta, it'll be Carmelo and LeBron trading faces, seeing how that works? I'd watch that movie.
I have to find a name for that, Andrew, because it is funny. I do always get annoyed when you point at a player like Kawhi, and people go, well, he's only good because he plays on the Spurs. Or you point at a player like Kevin Love, and they go, his numbers only look good because he's on a bad team. And you go, you just pointed out, we have tons of examples. We have LeBrons, we have Dwights that went to bad franchises, that were on teams that didn't make the playoffs, that when they were put on playoff-worthy teams, took those teams to the finals, putting up great numbers.
And there were early signals in Love, and what was the other guy you made an example? What was the other guy? There was another guy you made an example. It was Kevin Love. It was Kevin Love.
Oh, Kawhi.
Both those guys were really good in college. Those are early signals that, okay, maybe I would rather take a chance on those guys than some mystery box.
If I remember right, wasn't Leonard top 3 or maybe number 1 on a lot of the advanced stat draft lists?
Arturo.
Yeah, Arturo, Ari Caroline, all those guys. Because if I remember right, the scouting said, oh, he's got bad shooting mechanics or some stupid complaint like that, but he does everything else best in college. So I guess it worked out for the Spurs.
Scoring's not everything, and a lot of people do not get that.
All right, so I thought that was a smooth transition, but it wasn't, because what we're going to talk is two players that are allegedly on the block, both of them hilarious. So Carmelo Anthony is allegedly kind of on the trading block. He's got a no-trade clause in his contract. And DeMarcus Cousins, this one I just heard about today before the call, Andrew, and you brought it up. I guess the Suns are in talks for Cousins. I don't buy it, by the way. What they've offered, I think it was, it says, from the article that you linked, it says, in the potential deal, the Suns would include either Bledsoe or Booker. That could be interesting. And the Kings are reportedly willing to offer Cousins an extension. And so it's kind of one of those. I think it was, if I heard right, it was like Len, another player, and maybe 2 draft picks.
It was Len, Booker, and a draft pick. Which, if you're the Kings, you do that, but they're not going to do it.
Yeah, I saw that, and it just was one of those.
Classic Vivek.
Vivek is. We talked about this. You said it's time to lay to rest your faith in Vivek Dre. You put that on the script, Andrew. I'll point out that, right after he got hired, I did an article where I said none of what he's doing is anything like. I made a David and Goliath pun, Brian. If you want to look up the article, I might add it. And if you want to add it to the script, But I did some point where I said, when he coached, the reason Vivek is famous is because Malcolm Gladwell wrote about him in the book
David Goliath, yeah.
David Goliath. And he basically pointed out that it's the advantages it's things that are disadvantages that are actually advantages. So Vivek takes over his daughter's basketball team. This is, I don't know which, middle school or high school, I think middle school, and takes them to state. And he does it because he focuses on things like rebounds and steals, because none of them can shoot. And that's what he focused on. And then when he took over the Kings, he went yay points. He went all in yay points. So Vivek Ranadive, who is the owner of the Kings and seems over his head, it's like, yeah, this has been one of the most dysfunctionally run franchises ever. And what is amusing to us, and I think does tie them to Carmelo Anthony, is their unyielding love of DeMarcus Cousins, who I agree has all of the talent in the world, but has never been worth the contract he's on.
And he also wants to start a big three with Cousins, Westbrook, and Gay. And I'm rooting for this. I want to see this so bad. I want to see this so bad.
But Rudy Gay, so it was interesting is Rudy Gay is now injured and Rudy Gay is older. Rudy Gay has never been good, and people were arguing Rudy Gay was a trade chip. And by the way, no way in expletive is Russell Westbrook going to the Kings.
He'll go to the Lakers, even though they're dumpster fire. He'll go to the Lakers before he goes to Sacramento.
If there's a team, by the way, to that point on the Lakers, the Clippers are a great example of how, if you're in a big market and can attract a few stars, you can turn things around real quick, and things can turn around really quick on you. The Lakers and the Clippers are such great proof that all it takes is one or two stars falling into your lap to make you a contender, and those stars get injured, those stars get old, and it's all over.
It amazes me every year that the Knicks suck. Like, that team should be really good.
And remember, it was a bizarre decision by the league that led to this. They canceled the trade that gave Chris Paul to the Lakers and sent him to the Clippers instead. That single-handedly, just that one weird thing that, I sound like an internet ad now. Sorry, I didn't mean to use the word weird. Anyway, but you guys know what I'm saying, right? If that had gone differently, it might have been the opposite.
Clippers still suck. It's possible that Sterling still owns them.
Oh my
but yeah,
God.
the Knicks in the big market are weird, and I think, would you agree with this, Andrew? I think they've just kind of had this weird unluck where they've kind of had a star roulette, and they've missed. Like on every time there's a star roulette, they've always ended up with the overrated star.
Yep, Patrick Ewing.
Yep, and then, but I'm saying, like, LeBron was allegedly going to them. Possibly Wade. They were targeting Bron and Wade. Those are the huge names. Bosch too. None of them go to them. They end up with Amari Stoudemire. They target, they have all of these great draft pieces, and they go after Carmelo Anthony. It's like, had they just gotten the right star once, they could have been different. And that one brief time where they had Tyson Chandler and Jason Kidd, if it's any star but Melo, that team could have had at least a title run.
That Carmelo trade Knicks team was really fun to watch, like with Gallo and there's a couple other guys that are on that team. Billups, Wilson Chandler. That team was pretty fun. Landry Fields. That team was really, really, really exciting to watch, and they were young and productive, more importantly.
Well, the Gallo and Wilson Chandler injuries make me so sad, because I don't think people realize how bad of a trade that was for the Knicks. If Gallo had stayed healthy, I think if Chandler had stayed healthy, I didn't really like him, but he's a trade asset. But he was never healthy enough to get traded. So if Gallo had stayed healthy and Chandler had stayed healthy, the Nuggets would have been way different. And then, of course, the Ty Lawson thing. This is
always a fun exercise for me to do. Like with a couple of my friends, I always ask him, this is the way you can tell that a guy's impactful. And I said, when Dwight left Orlando, look what happened to Orlando. When LeBron left Cleveland, look what happened to Cleveland. But look what happened when Carmelo left Denver. They got better.
Well, also, what's rough to that exact same point. Look what happened when Ty Lawson and Andre Iguodala left the Nuggets. That was such a dagger through my heart. Those two were such huge parts of some Nuggets teams that were my favorites, and ouch.
Yeah.
All right, and I just actually I want to give. The other note, and I don't have too much news on it, but Melo and Phil Jackson are maybe feuding, maybe fighting. There's some. If we're going to talk internet rumors, Brian, Phil Jackson may be trying to goad Melo into demanding a trade so he can get rid of his contract. Because What's his contract? The site we all like that you recommended, Andrew, is Spotrack.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna do. I'm sure you'll get it on screen, Brian, and I'll do it too. Where you just type Spotrack Carmelo Anthony, it comes up because I think he's still guaranteed like $40 million over two. Oh, geez, he's guaranteed through 2019.
Yeah.
25 to 28 million a season. Yeah, and I mean, he's going to be 33, and he's already starting to show signs of slowing down. So it's not surprising if Phil Jackson wants to get rid of him. I don't disagree with that. And I don't think Phil Jackson knows what to do with his trade value because Phil Jackson thus far has been a dumpster fire in terms of moves.
Side note, can I say that I think Phil Jackson's overrated? I'm not a big fan of coaches, period, because I just think they get in the way, but I think Phil Jackson's overrated. If you look at like everything like post Shaq, Lakers and stuff, I just struggle. I was really skeptical when he became the GM of the Knicks because I was just like, I don't think outside of the Jordan and Shaq teams, what has he done to show me that he knows how to evaluate talent? And we're starting to see that with, we've seen it with like Michael Jordan and the Bobcats. And so it's kind of funny to see that those guys step away from those dynasties and stuff and see them actually have the reins and can make decisions and they suck at it.
Well, so this is a great tangent. Let's go down it. And this has been an article I've been debating writing. What was fascinating is Dave Barry's numbers did show that Phil Jackson seemed to improve the performance of the players on the teams. And what I think he had an amazing skill at doing was in getting star players that had volatile personalities to get along together. Because for all of this weird talk about players like Brad Beal and John Wall not getting along, or Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant feuding, or Draymond Green getting mad at Kevin Durant, this is nothing new. Am I wrong in this memory? Michael Jordan, I believe in 1998, punched Steve Kerr in the head in the practice because he got mad at like a screen he was doing.
And then Bill Winnington wanted to break his legs in practice one day.
Yeah, so it's not like Michael Jordan and the rest of the Bulls, that the dynasty Bulls got along. And in fact, I saw an article recently. It's something like Dennis Rodman never talked to Jordan and Pippen.
Shaq and Kobe never got along, but 3 titles.
So what I was going to say is, it did seem like Phil Jackson was able to go into these situations of these star players with big personalities. And for what it's worth, like here's a modern day example. James Harden and Russell Westbrook, a stat that came up, I put on the top 10 box scores of the week this week, are the only players in modern history, 1984 on, to get a triple-double with 50 points or more, which is ridiculous. They were both drafted by the same team. And you can look at, if they'd both stayed on the Thunder, they have a lot of overlapping skill sets, and it makes sense that, James Harden was asking for a bigger role, and they might have been feuding. Phil Jackson's skill seemed to be to get players like that to get along, to at least play together, even if they didn't get along like hunky-dory or friends, to play together and play better.
Well, so let's I'll go ahead, Andrew.
I'm not like discounting like morale and personalities and stuff. I just think it's overblown. When everyone talks the chemistry stuff, I think it's overblown. I don't think it matters as much as people think.
Yeah, but then to finish up the point on Phil Jackson out of that, I'm saying it seemed like he might be good at that, and I think you might be right. It might not be as much. Did Phil Jackson matter as much as just making sure that you kept Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and Michael Jordan, or Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, Steve Kerr, and Tony Kukoc on a team together? Which mattered more? I'd argue keeping the team together.
Yeah.
But in his biography, Phil Jackson points out that he had a list of 10 names for power forwards, and Dennis Rodman was 10th. And the only reason they got Dennis Rodman was because basically Dennis, the sign went up that said buy now or leave it. So a lot of what's fascinating to me, and then the same thing on the Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson. How am I dropping the GM's name? Someone help me out here.
Jerry Krause.
Thank you. I got it right. Apparently hated Jerry Krause, but Jerry Krause worked like hell to keep those teams together. So to your point on Phil Jackson.
Yeah, did Phil Jackson even go get Rodman, or was it Krause?
I think Phil Jackson wanted Rodman. Okay. But I'm saying in Phil Jackson's world, they would have picked up other players in front of Rodman, and no Rodman and no second three-peat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, so okay,
right.
How about this, Dre, on Phil Jackson? So the measurable things that how coaches affect the game, and you just talked about them all, right? Picking the right players, the right lineups, keeping the team together mentally, getting them to play hard on defense, and then improving them such that they stay at that level after they leave the team. Those are all the things that, Dave Barry and others research said coaches affect the game. However, so Phil Jackson's the best at that. However, he may not be the best GM ever. I think that's the difference. He's a good coach, but maybe not a good GM, right?
If I read that research, it was Pop and Phil,
yes,
right?
Those two did that.
And the thing about Pop used to be in management before he switched over to coaching. So
and he was in the military too.
Yeah, and then the thing about Steve Kerr was in management and then went over to coaching. So I think that plays a little bit into, but looking into Steph Curry going like Super Saiyan. So that's another thing about Golden State, which I always point to when people talk about Golden State and the longevity of how long can they sustain this greatness. I was gonna say, well, it all started when Steph Curry just went God level for like 2 seasons.
Yeah, he had a jump in another. And it's funny, by the way, that not Russell Westbrook, although him too. It's funny that James Harden is now doing the Curry too, because James Harden and Steph Curry 2 seasons ago, 1 and 1A for MVP, were like, oh my God, they're amazing. Last season, Steph Curry, we agree, unanimous MVP, but we said, okay, James Harden came back down to earth. He's still a star player, but that was just one outlier season. But then he's having this season, so I got not much more to say on that. All right,